take you then to this conversation, and we'll take you back to that book launch throughout the course of the show. But let's go to this now. South Africa is still baffled by the shocking story of a former police officer, Nomia Rosemary Ndlovu, who allegedly masterminded the murders of her relatives. She has allegedly amassed close to 1.4 million rands in payouts. Linda Mnisi has been in court, and he joins us now to talk about this. Linda, this is one of those baffling stories, one of those stories that we watch and we say, oh my goodness, what are we even watching here? Especially when you are looking at her demeanor in the dock and outside. But I'd like us to talk about the difficult day that she appeared to have today, especially under cross-examination.
A lot of us had anticipated, Bongio, that it would really be a dramatic day, given the fact that yesterday we took an earlier adjournment as she complained about chest pains. But we saw quite a different Nomia today, who really cooperated with all the processes, even going as far as saying that she's fine today, she is willing to go ahead. Now today, of course, the state was cross-examining her based on the evidence that she's put forward in her defense. Now, you would have heard they started with the issue around her relationship with the hitman Jabulo Kunen, who also happens to be the brother of her friend Tebisile. They also spoke about the issues around the policies, how much she received, and what she had said in the initial affidavit, going as far as the issue around Zanele Mota, who she lived with. She says she lived with her for about a month, but Zanele then suddenly died, and she also happened to have claimed for her life.
Now, one of the things that, you know, when you look at yesterday, we were told that she had chest pains, but surprisingly, I'd like us to watch a video that you took on the sidelines as she was being escorted out, and I'd really like for you to tell us what was going on at that moment when, you know, this was happening.
So there you're seeing her walking out in what was an unusual, you know, practice, especially when you look at an accused person appearing in court. Usually when they're escorted out, you do not see them walking out through the main door, the door that everybody uses. They usually leave from the back. You don't even see them. If you're lucky to catch the vehicles, you catch them outside. But yesterday, we saw them escort her out. And at that moment, obviously, because there are people outside court, people have been seeing her on television. So there were a number of cameras, people taking visuals, saying, oh, so this is the Nomia that we've been seeing on television. But of course, journalists taking visuals, that visual that you're seeing right now of her going into the police van. But it seemed as though she was agitated by that moment, and she started throwing her food at journalists. So at that particular moment, even the police, as you can see there, who were escorting her, trying to calm her down and contain her. But she turned around, looked at me, who was taking that video, tried to throw her chips at me, but it did not work out. She then went back to the other photographer and threw her food at him.
Linda, I have to ask you about today's moment, especially because after the adjournment, something else happened, a video that you took inside court, and she appeared to be threatening you. What was going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we saw today was really a completely different Nomia. If you look at that video in particular, there she is just on the other side of the door. And she's making gestures that suggest that these are threatening gestures, you know, looking directly at me as I was taking that particular video. It was really unexpected, given the fact that she had really, you know, been cooperative today. You know, the judge making sure that even the police were escorting her. I think also in light of what happened yesterday, they were awakened to the issue of security, making sure that those who are in court, especially journalists who will be taking videos of her, are of course safe. But in that moment, she turned around and started making gestures like, and you know, all of those things.
And what were the police around her then saying at the time?
So the police around her, as you can see, they then took her away. She then went down the stairs where she was said to have exited. There was, of course, another conversation around how she left yesterday. And I remember one of the police officers saying that, in fact, the investigating officer saying that she is not supposed to be leaving through the main door. She's supposed to be leaving from behind and at the back where all the accused persons would leave.
Now, Linda, in that particular moment, were you able to hear what she was saying through the glass door, or was it simply inaudible?
I couldn't really hear because, of course, of the distance. As you can see, as I took the video, I had to come close because I saw the gestures that she was making, and for it to be quite visible on the video, I had to come close. So as I was coming close, I could barely hear what she was saying, but I could tell from the position that I was standing in, she was kind of pointing at me, as you can see there in the video, and then she went down.
Now, Linda, one of the things that, yesterday we saw was her mother coming out speaking about the fact that she did not feel under threat at no point, and she felt, safe, and she painted a picture of someone who doesn't understand where these allegations come from that surround her daughter now. Talk to us about that relationship, because we also saw her break down in the presence of her mother.
It's quite interesting, Bongiwe, if you compare what happened yesterday with her mother taking to the stand, and even the previous day when she met her mother for the first time. That was the first time that she'd seen her mother since her arrest in March 2018. So the judge really wanting to afford her that opportunity to connect and bond with her mother. She really broke down in the court that was next door. Yesterday, the mother taking the stand, explaining that at no point did a man come to her house asking for water, who was said to be the hitman. At no point did she feel threatened at her home, so she has no reason perhaps to believe that that was happening. But you listen today to the evidence that's been put by the state that in fact her sister Joyce, who she had tried to burn with her 5 children, had even said on the witness stand that in fact she had called on the same day where she had planned to travel to Joyce's house with those hitmen. She had planned, or she called Joyce and said, help me look for a traditional healer, because my mother and I don't have a good relationship. I don't think my mother wishes me well. My mother does not want me to be happy. My mother does not want me to get married. So that gave us a bit of insight into the kind of relationship that they really had. And one, if you put it, against the relationship that we saw yesterday in the past 2 days, then it really creates a bit of imbalance there.
Let's talk about, very quickly, Linda, about the allegations that continue to dog her and some of the people then that she's accused of plotting to kill.
Interesting enough, there's the issue of the cousin today, which really stood out for me. I mean, if you look at the death of witness Homo, who went missing, was later found, severely attacked in a bush. She was quizzed or asked about the money, the insurance payout that she received, and she said she claimed from 2 different insurances, and that is Old Mutual and Hollard. And in the Old Mutual insurance, she received about 15,000 rand, but because this was an accidental death, that money was doubled, so she received about 33,000 rand. At Hollard, she received 100,000 rand. She said that money, the Hollard money, was paid 6 months down the line. Now, the issue also comes into how witness Homo was listed in her documents. When she applied, the state is alleging that she did purposely and fraudulently list witness as her spouse, because then there would be no premiums that she would pay for witness Homo. What did she do with the money? She was asked, what did you do with the money? She said, I contributed. I mean, I bought food, there was petrol, I bought cold drinks, things that would contribute to the funeral. But the state is saying that, well, witness's sister, Eva, came and testified that, in fact, yeah, you had contributed, but you contributed about 200 rands, because at some point they were struggling with the funeral arrangements. There was not even meat, so you contributed about 200 rand. Now, this is put against her, saying that she did not want to take up insurance because she wanted to enrich herself. She took out insurance because she wanted to help her family members who wouldn't be able to afford funerals should it happen.
Now, there's also the sister as well as a nephew.
There is, of course, the sister, the issue around Audrey. You would have heard the evidence around her son, Brilliant Mashego, yesterday, who is said to have died after, he confronted her about the fact that she may have received money for her mother's death. Brilliant, in this matter, she says she last saw Brilliant in Bushbuckridge, but the mother then cracks that alibi, saying that she did not know about Rosemary's presence in Bushbuckridge. In fact, all she knows was that Rosemary was in Johannesburg, and she only came to the funeral of brilliant Mashego. Now, that is quite important, Bongio, because she herself said in court that she traveled about 2 times to Bushbuckridge, but the mother says, according to her knowledge, Rosemary was in Bushbuckridge.
It's a very, interesting, riveting stuff that's coming out from court. Linda, what can we expect next?
So on Monday, we're expecting the court to sit in the Johannesburg High Court, so it's no longer sitting in Palm Ridge. It's returned to the Johannesburg High Court. The state will continue with cross-examination. They're right now dealing with the issue around Zanele Mota, the niece who lived with her for about 2 months. So they'll be continuing with that in terms of the circumstances around her passing, because she had also indicated that when she got to Tembisa Hospital, where Zanele was found, injured and wheelchair bound, Zanele couldn't walk. But she then later today saying that on the same day that Zanele was released from hospital, Zanele was walking at home and she was not given medication, but she gave her medication. Zanele died 2 days later at a different hospital after being in her care for those 2 different days.
Do we know how long the trial is set to run for, and if the state is going to be calling more witnesses?
At this point, it's unclear, Bongiwe, but it's quite interesting looking at the defense and the witnesses that it's said to have called or wanted to call. Initially, they had said that they want about 2 witnesses to testify here. Now, this is against about 53 witnesses that the state has called, which include experts and all of those people that were involved in taking up the insurances. But the defense at this point looks like it will not be calling any other person. It said the evidence, it would not be using the evidence of the brother who would corroborate the story of Zanele that the state is dealing with right now.
Interesting stuff, Linda. I know that you'll be back in court. It sits in Johannesburg next week, and we are going to be tracking these developments through your eyes then at court. That's Linda Mnisi, who was bringing up a wrap of proceedings in that case.